Did you know Ravnica City of Guilds was the second block and fifth set to focus on multicolored cards? Mark Rosewater, Magic's head designer and lead designer for Ravnica, took a different approach on multicolored cards for this set. He focused strictly on color pairs, rather than various color combinations and a card's casting cost. The idea of representing color pairs as guilds came from former creative director for Magic, Brady Dommermuth. With a total of 10 guilds, or color pairs, for the block's 3 sets, only 4 guilds were featured in the first set, and the other 6 would be in the sequel sets Guild Pact and Dissension. The 4 guilds introduced in Ravnica City of Guilds were Boros, Dimir, Golgari, and Selesnya. Focusing on the color pairs was so important that every multicolored card in Ravnica City of Guilds only had 2 different colors in their mana cost. This changed in the following set, Guild Pact, when the Nephilims broke that rule, but they reverted back to color pairs only in the final set, Dissension. The Magic team gave each guild its own unique keyword ability. Also, cards affiliated with a guild would have its guild symbol watermarked under the rules text. The watermarks were only used to identify a card's guild affiliation and did not affect any rules of the game. The last new concept was hybrid mana. For the first time, players could choose which color mana they wanted to pay within the hybrid mana symbol. With so many gold cards in the set, players would need lots of non-basic land cards to assist them in casting these spells. That's when the so-called bounce lands and shock lands were introduced to the game. One of the most exciting parts of Ravnica was the new cycle of dual lands. However, they came with a drawback that forced the land to enter the battlefield tapped unless its controller paid 2 life. Because the additional cost of paying 2 life, they got the nickname Shock Lands. For Ravnica City of Guilds, only 4 Shock Lands were printed because they corresponded to the 4 guilds featured in the set. The other 6 saw print in the following sets. These new dual lands were incredibly successful. It provided for a greater variety of colors for players to build with in Standard. And for non-rotating formats, they were incredibly efficient with fetch lands, since each land categorized as 2 basic land types. However, their popularity and value steadily declined as Ravnica block rotated out of Standard. But that changed when Modern was introduced in 2011. With Modern becoming a very popular non-rotating format, the Shock Lands value skyrocketed. Fortunately, Return to Ravnica released a year after Modern's introduction, and a large print-run reprint of the Shock Lands dropped their secondary market value. For now, they have settled at a more reasonable price. In 2006, the Boros spell Lightning Helix became the sole card of the greatest top deck ever witnessed on Magic Pro Tour coverage. It happened in the semifinals of Pro Tour Honolulu. Craig Jones piloted a Zoo deck versus Olivier Ruel's Orzhov deck called Hand in Hand. In the 5th game, Craig had 1 turn left to win. First, he brought Olivier down to 3 with the burn spell Char. All Craig needed to do was deal 3 damage, which he could not achieve by attacking with his creature. Instead, he drew Lightning Helix off the top of his deck, and the match ended in epic fashion.
Oh my God! Craig Jones is through to finals!
Speaking of Zoo, Ravnica brought this famous deck archetype to the forefront thanks to the Shock Lands, Lightning Helix, and several low-cost, high-power creatures like Watchwolf. When Ravnica rotated out of Standard, Zoo kept seeing play in other formats, including Modern. For the very first time, Birds of Paradise received a reprint outside of a core set, or a base set, which is what they were called back then. The Ravnica Birds of Paradise was also the 3rd iteration of artwork done for the iconic Mana Dork. We believe the reason why Birds of Paradise was printed in Ravnica was for the block format, since it can produce mana of any color. Dark Confident, aka Bob, was originally printed in Ravnica. This card was designed by Magic Hall of Famer Bob Maher for winning the 2004 Magic Invitational. One of only 11 invitational cards ever printed, Dark Confidant saw lots of play in Standard, Extended, Legacy, Vintage, and Modern. Today, it's considered Black's greatest 2-drop creature and has been in the discussion of the greatest 2-drop creature ever printed. One of the most broken keyword mechanics the game has ever seen was Dredge. Attributed to the Golgari Guild, its ability to mill cards equal to its dredge number was synergistic with many other cards in the game. This quickly became a busted mechanic to the point where Mark Rosewater ranked Dredge to be one of the most overpowered mechanics. Besides supplemental products, Dredge will most likely never be reprinted again. Ravnica was the first time that Richard Garfield, Magic's creator, returned to design the game since he officially left Wizards of the Coast several years prior. His contributions to the set were considerable, but according to Mark Rosewater, Richard's most significant contribution never made it into the set. Since Ravnica was a city plane, Richard came up with a new card type called Structures. The idea was to create a permanent that represented a building, and it had effects similar to enchantments and artifacts, but could only be destroyed by damaging it. Even though this never saw print, Mark Rosewater loved the concept and used it when Magic R&D was developing the very first Planeswalker cards. So if you ever wondered how Magic came up with the idea of creatures being able to attack Planeswalkers and loyalty counters as a way to count their life as well, that came from Richard Garfield. Ravnica is often referred to as one of the greatest sets of all time. It is arguably one of the best standalone sets to draft, and it saved the game at a time when the player base was declining. As a matter of fact, it was so successful that Mark Rosewater wanted to return to Ravnica immediately after the following block, but that obviously never happened. It would take nearly 7 years before Magic returned to the beloved plane when Return to Ravnica was released in 2012. I know there's a lot more to go over on Ravnica's City of Guilds, but this is all we have for this episode. I'm Nate Holt, the narrator for this episode. If you want to know more about me, check out my web series Enter the Battlefield and Walking the Plains. They're on Magic's YouTube channel, and you can just find it by Googling it. Please subscribe to the channel and visit our sponsor, CoolStuffInc.com. On their site, you can read more articles on Magic and even purchase sealed packs or singles. Also, make sure to check out the Did You Know Magic playlist to watch more episodes. Thanks for watching.